Welcome to the Soft Rebellion podcast, a homecoming to the creative power of your female body. Our world uproots us from the gifts of the feminine, the intuitive, the instinctual, the cyclical, the soft. What's the result? Patriarchal cultures of perfectionism, shame, and disconnect that leave us constantly running, never arriving. Imagine a world of women softly rebelling, claiming our cyclicity, our weirdness, and our rest as we courageously cultivate a deep and delicious relationship to our female bodies. My name is Florina. I'm an osteopath, dancer, writer, and coach. I've been on my own journey sparked by an eating disorder to come home to the wild, poetic anatomy of my female body and awaken my creative power. And I invite you to join me and my guests, trailblazing teachers, healers, and creatives, as we each reclaim our own soft rebellion. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Soft Rebellion. I'm so happy, excited, and honored that you are here with me and us. Yes, what does it mean to rebel softly? What does it mean to walk a spiritual path that challenges, heals, and liberates? What does it mean to let go of the costume which no longer fits you and feel an intuitive sense of flow to life and trusting your own experience? In today's episode, a very amazing, soulful episode, I sit down with the amazing and ever so inspiring Alice Grist. Alice is an award-winning author, tarot deck creator, and spiritual guide to rebellious women looking to invoke intuition and the sacred connection through everyday lives. And together we journeyed, we literally flowed through a conversation exploring the intersection of creativity, intuition, and mystic rebellion. I have so much enjoyed my time with Alice, and I've harvested lots of gold nuggets and seeds to plant in my own life to really trust that deep inner intuitive voice. And I hope that this conversation will do the same with you. Enjoy. Welcome, Alice, on the podcast. Warm welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, I'm so excited to spend this time with you today, diving into your and my rebellious world. And it's funny, as I was planning and kind of leaning into our conversation, I repeatedly met kind of a resistance to really nail down questions or topics. And I thought I have to trust that. So I kind of see and I feel colors and textures and sounds which we might be weaving into new lands together today. And I don't fully know where it will take us, but I trust 100% my and your intuition, especially also witnessing your very recent work, which is a lot about intuition.
It is, yeah. The next book is all about intuition, and it came about intuitively. And then I think I have 3 children running about this place, and I have the option of overthinking, or I have the option of intuition. And I do a bit of both. But yes, let's intuitively flow.
Yes, and we'll absolutely gonna get into a bit more of that later. But I would love to, the one thing I'd love to start asking you, because on your, I think it's on your, definitely on your Instagram page, where you write rebellious and creative woman spirituality. And this is the Soft Rebellion podcast. So yeah, what does rebellious mean to you, Alice?
That's a really good question. And that's a new title on there. It's something that I've had to carve out for myself over years of trying to figure myself out, as we're all trying to figure ourselves out. And I think, I did the Rebel Heart Tarot, and I've written all these books and had all these children and had a third child at the age of 44. And I don't know, I guess at some point I must have taken stock of my life and realized that the work I was doing and the things I was saying and the clients that I work with, it's all about rebelling. So not rebelling in the way that we're perhaps taught about it in school, like being the naughty kid. I'm not talking about that kind of rebellion, although I'm sure there's similarities. But the rebellion of not doing what we're told, in terms of we're told so much on this kind of really intrinsic and nuanced level that we don't even realize it's there to rebel against a lot of the time. And for women in particular, we can live a whole life, unexamined, fitting into various roles, wearing so many different masks. And there's so much other stuff to be and so many other ways to exist. And, I'm only just sort of tipping the iceberg on all of that, because I do what I want to do, but I also have to fit in, the routine and the normalities. So I think to be a rebellious woman is to just constantly weave in and out of what is true to yourself, and figure a way to do that whilst also holding down whatever your life happens to look like, and being okay with that and the frustrations that might bring.
Yes. Yeah, what I really heard there was to also to maybe to awaken to awaken to who I am, not as much as to who I am, and to awaken to who I thought I am for years, and recognizing, no, actually that's not, that suit is way too tight. I've never chosen that myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways we try to be. And, I look back over my life and I see from a very early age, I'm trying to be a certain version of self that gets seen or gets approval. Or, I remember being very proud of being a good girl. Mom, I'm a good girl, aren't I? Which is just what the patriarchy likes, which is interesting, because my mom is was a radical feminist. But I still, you still absorb that. And I guess parents kind of still put that on because it's just so part of the dialogue of the culture that we live in. And then, I did go quite, teen years and early 20s, quite wild. So that may be seen as a rebellion. But actually that led to deep unhappiness and dissatisfaction and kind of other forms of frustration. And it's really, for me, since I had children, that I, for some reason, gave myself permission, or the very act of being pregnant, being a portal to life. And I don't think pregnancy is the only portal, so it's not like a necessity, but there's many portals. But for me, it was a portal of creativity. For me, that brought through stuff that I think was helpful to my children and who they are going to be, but also that allows me to be more liberated and expressive and, again, constantly reinventing and finding oneself and letting go. I'm not sure we ever probably finish that. I'll probably be 80 years old and sat here talking to you and telling you that I'm still letting things go and still kind of releasing those skins that we wear.
Yeah, I was just, as you said, thinking, we're constantly shedding layers and unnumbing. I use the word unnumbing a lot recently, unnumbing our own experience more. But talking about your mom was a radical feminist, maybe walk us a little bit more into your journey. I know that your journey into this spiritual realm began in your teenage years, laid kind of foundations of what you did.
I mean, my whole life, I guess, has led me in this direction. So my dad, when I was a very, very young child, my dad was a vicar, Church of England vicar. So I was already kind of in what felt like a magical space. We lived in the vicarage with the church next door, and I would go to Sunday school or whatever, and it felt magical. It felt otherworldly. It was different. It was a different experience, I guess, than the other kids whose fathers were not vicars, and we all have our own unique and magical experiences. And then when he finished being a vicar, he finished because my mum and him split up, because my mum was gay. So she had a female partner after that. And then, so my dad, I think, felt quite lost and ended up leaving the church. Um, but eventually, as I was sort of nearing on becoming a teenager, he became a goddess worshipping Wiccan pagan person. Um, and so I would go around as an older child, um, and as a teenager, and they'd let me join in. So him and his wife would be holding sessions with their coven. So I didn't get involved in the kind of um, ritualistic stuff, but more the hanging around, chatting, painting people's toenails whilst tarot cards were kind of flashing about the place, and learning to do hands-on healing and meditation and energy work, all whilst also being quite chill. And as I got a little bit older, having a glass of wine with them whilst this was going on, and just getting taken to pagan picnics and goddess worshipping groups and things like that, which is, it was the 80s and the early 90s, so quite, we have a lot more access to these things now thanks to the internet, but it was completely unheard of, I imagine, back then, and quite bizarre. But it was an amazing experience for me, and I really took to it. Got my own tarot cards, started reading for friends, and then that's just been a part of my path ever since, really. Onwards into, like I say, motherhood and through the crazy 20s.
Wow, yeah, I wasn't aware of that so much. You grew into those circles and perspectives and tools and
I feel like I grew into them and I've grown out of them, and sometimes I put it back in. And there's all different, I feel like I'm probably older than my dad was now when he did that. And he's not a witch now, he's a Quaker. So he sits in a completely different, well, similar but very different space. And I think that suits him perhaps better than all those other spaces. And for me, I'm, finding my own intrigues within it all. And I would never call myself a witch or a pagan, actually. But those things have certainly influenced me to recognize that I don't have to toe any particular line, as we see with, structured religion and formal religion. And Wicca is quite structured as well, and in its own way quite formal. And I feel like I need to be free from that too. I need to just be able to be in my kitchen where I am and burn my incense and write my books and be in nature.
So what happened when you left school? When did you publish your first book, Alice?
Well, that came about 10 years-ish after I left school. So I went to university, ended up moving to Leicestershire, where I still am. Met my husband, who was in a band, and played rock chick girlfriend for, a good 10 years. So it was quite wild, and fun and formative, but also then it got to a point where I was like, I really just don't, this is not right anymore. And that's when I started reeling back into the spiritual. So around 28, 29. And at the same time, that's when I decided to write my first book, which was The High Heel Guide to Enlightenment, quickly followed by The High Heel Guide to Spiritual Living. And they were really my way of rediscovering my spirituality via kind of explorations in all things spiritual. I think they were quite ahead of their time, actually. They'd probably do quite well if they came out now. Well, this was like pre kind of social media being what it is. But yeah, I did all kinds of wacky stuff and then wrote about it, and but yeah, and then carried on writing and also creating tarot decks and yeah, and it's all spiraling differently now. It's interesting.
I'd love if you take us a bit more into the world of tarot, because it's interesting. When Lisa Lister was on the show, I'm sure you know her, I think I pulled one of her, it's a tarot, but one of her cards. I still remember what it was. It was the resting card. But we've never really on the Soft Rebellion podcast talked about tarot, or I've actually never talked about anyone with it. But in my just very simple own personal practice, it's and I'm trying to figure out what is it, why it's so meaningful in my I'm not using what are the official tarot cards? As the
Right
official
away.
ones. Yes.
The kind of, I wouldn't, the standard, the ones that people like to use, is
But
right
I
away.
would, that one. I'd really like to explore with you or her a bit more about how can working with tarot really be support us or guide us in that. With every conversation, I try to kind of find another puzzle stone to that homecoming piece. I mean, what does it mean to come home to our intuition, to the wisdom of our, I call it the homecoming, to the creative power, to the hunger of the female body. And whenever I pull a card, I can sense its meaning and almost kind of urgency. But I'd love to hear from you.
I think reading tarot, when you really get into it, and oh God, it took me years to kind of create the experience I have with it now. But it's like stripping yourself naked and looking in the mirror and having to stare.
Bam. Yes.
Comfortable with. And I think a lot of the time that's why people don't like tarot, because they don't want to look at the things that may not be right, or the things that aren't right about themselves, or the things that need tweaking and changing. Not that the physical needs that, but it's that same kind of experience of what is it we don't like about ourselves. And I think I'm currently writing a talk that I'm doing for a tarot conference about why are tarot so bloody mean. Because I don't think they are mean, but I think if we're not ready for them, they can feel like such a bitchy discovery. Like, why are they telling me this? I don't want to know this. But the more we open ourselves to this kind of really raw information about ourselves, the more able we are to begin to change and to transform. And it's only really when we're willing to do that kind of scolding work that the tarot really come into play. And I think a lot of people will go to the tarot because they want to know the future. That's how I went to the tarot as a teenager. I definitely needed to know if I was going to get a boyfriend and when he was coming, and it never came. And the tarot constantly told me that was not happening. So frustrating. The tarot are frustrating because they're not always telling you what you want to know. They're not a gentle thing like an oracle deck or an angel deck that's reassuring you. They're like, look at yourself. Look at where your power is. Your power is not in this space, it's somewhere else. Or, they're very deeply personal, and they kind of they dig in and they pull a lot of stuff to the surface. And it's whether we're willing to see that and sit with it and work with it. And if we are, that's where you get your transformation. That's where you begin to become more who you're supposed to be. And because that's what I think the tarot are really, really best at doing. The way I read them, they're really just trying to redirect people back to the truth of who they should be, of who they could be, of the purpose they've been put on, why their spirit came to this body and this particular life. It's almost, the tarot are just a deck of pretty pictures that enable our intuition to remember, I think.
Well, thank you for clarifying that tarot is not the same as very different to the oracle deck. It's so tempting to, that's what I'm using. Of course, I'm using oracle decks, which, exactly.
I love an oracle deck.
It's always, it's lovely, but it's always, it's not that rawness and nakedness is not there, right? It's as you say, what is an oracle deck? Yeah, it's what you said, a specific word there. It's always for you, or the tarot is for you.
Reassuring. Oracle decks feel really reassuring, unless you get a particularly potent one. I've had a few, actually, that were a bit like, oh. But yeah, no, tarot is, it's like getting in a fight with yourself sometimes. Particularly...
How do you use... Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, go on.
How do you practice tarot on a daily basis? Do you pull a card? How do you?
I don't anymore.
Every day?
No. Not anymore. No, I did, and I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a really great thing to do. Particularly if you're getting to know the tarot, you need to be pulling cards, and you need to be seeing how each card reflects you and your life. So not necessarily what the book says, but pull a card, see what it says, what's the imagery, what happens in your day, how do the two marry up. I think that's a really helpful thing to do. I also think we can become too dependent on them, like anything. They can become a little bit of a crutch. Um, I do, I say I don't pull them every day. I pull them whenever I feel that I need to, and I generally will see the reflection and go, "Oh, thank you." I roll. It's like, because again, they're always reminding you of where you could be better, or where your energy's at. And quite often we already know that, or these days I feel like I already know that, and I'm working more intuitively and with life in general. So I don't always feel like I need the tarot. And I think you get that if you've been using the tarot or any kind of spiritual thing, divination technique for long enough, and you learn to trust your instincts, your intuition, then the tarot become less necessary, and you start to see signs in anything and everything, particularly nature.
Yes. But what I hear now, it can be, well, was tarot for you like an initiation? Is that the right word? Into, it almost sounds like or like an initiation or a bridge into also trusting the power and the instincts within, because exactly as you just say, after a while notice, wow, that's the card I pulled, and actually I felt that before I pulled the card.
Yeah, I think, tarot was definitely an initiation, and it went on for years with me. But also, I'd say alongside that, my, energy healing work, which is not something I do professionally or do to any capacity other than with my kids and people who happen to stumble my way, or my cats, or, my hamster was getting a dose the other day. But that kind and the other, just the fascination with the life between lives and what happens after we die. That's my real fascination. I feel like sometimes when I'm playing with tarot, it is playing compared to the kind of depths of all of that. And that's where I feel like I'm moving now, and I'll bring the tarot with me to all of that. But back to the kind of the things that I was fascinated with when I started, which was that we are divine, that we are beyond this human shell, and that there is life between lives, and maybe we reincarnate many thousands of times. And what does that mean, and what does that look like, and what does the space between look like? That's kind of where my fascination is with, I guess, with death, but not death in a kind of morbid way, death in a fantabulous way.
Is that when you say you're really fascinated by, I get life between life, you mean that moment, that meta liminal transformational moment after we die, until, I for myself, I know, I believe, I know, I feel, I sense that we reincarnate and we have more lives. And I
feel like there's a place we go to, and it's like home. And I find that whole. Have you read the work of Michael Newton? Because if not, I would definitely. I read it when I first started my spiritual path, sort of writing my first 2 books, and then I revisit it every few years, and it constantly blows my mind.
What's it called? Newton?
This Dr. Michael Newton, and he was a past life regressionist. Well, he wasn't actually. I think he was a psychiatrist or a psychologist who employed past life regression, and he ended up stumbling. No, sorry, he employed hypnosis to go back into people's lives, and he stumbled not just into past lives, but into some life between lives, like what happens when you're actually dead, I guess. And he has all these case studies and fascinating insights and very similar accounts from different people who were not primed to kind of have that information, because his books weren't out and nobody had previously discovered it. Just absolutely fascinating. And so I have undertaken kind of training in all of that, and it's not something I do, but I just find it beyond mind-boggling in the best possible way.
Wow, that makes me think. That makes me think of. I'm really mental cycle awareness, and I'm really big with my cycle at the moment. And that moment, at the kind of, I don't know, halfway into my bleed, when that dying happens, and that voidy, empty place where I'm often. When I was writing, it was my second last bleed. I was sitting at the river in the sun, and the one word which I want to say now, Alice, was home. I felt that's how, I think that's what I've written. That's how homecoming was the title of the thing I've written. That's how home tastes. And I can't even describe it, but I think now, that life between life, especially for us menstruating beings or inhabiting a bleeding body, I do know, or I believe that we actually really get to embody and lean into that space, or kind of
I do think as women, with those constant cycles of death of the egg, and it's is kind of, it's something that allows for us. Or I mean, I do believe that women are a portal. I'm sure every gender is a portal, but women are a particular kind of portal. Even without having babies, we're still entertaining that, our bodies are entertaining the possibility every single month, and we're on that cycle of life and death. And I think that's a really interesting thought that you've had, and beautiful. But I think it also, it shows up in every aspect of our being, and the cycles of life that go beyond that.
Absolutely.
The ways in which we grow and become a new person, and every time that happens, so much is lost and so much is gained, and you can live 1,000 lifetimes in one kind of 90-year period if you're lucky to be alive that long. So
it's a constant it's a constant shedding of something, and I feel, or I think now maybe, Alice, also a constant redefining, or maybe hopefully never know the answer to the question, what are we coming home to, and what does home mean? Because every
I don't think we
time
should know properly. I think we should
we should know, or we shouldn't.
We should not. I feel
No,
like
we
I'm
shouldn't.
fascinated with it, but if someone was to sit me down and go, well, actually, Alice, this is exactly what happens, and then I'd be like, ruined it for me. I feel like
Absolutely.
this is the thing: people who don't believe in a God or don't believe in the divine, and they look at life and they can't quite get their head around why there's something more, and it's because I think they're so uncomfortable with the unknown and so uncomfortable with the mysterious. But I think it's really beautiful for me that the mysterious and the unknown shows up in little inklings, or in the way that the tarot speak, or in the way that nature does something impressive, or the way intuitions happen, and synchronicities and coincidences that are absolutely astonishing. And yet some people will still go, oh no, that's just not, but for me, that these are the little magical clues, and I love that little trail of breadcrumbs, and I want to follow it for the rest of my life. But I don't necessarily want to know the actual full black and white picture. Like, that can wait. I feel like we're not supposed to know, and
I
we're not.
love.
Sorry,
I
go
just
on.
want to say, I love that how you just said breadcrumbs, because as we speak now, I feel, isn't that kind of the not knowing is for me definitely the driving force. That what kind of keeps me moving and creating, because I guess I feel a knowing, but I don't know. And that's
That's the thing of intuition, isn't it? Is we feel something, and we can't necessarily prove. We can have this whole book that I'm writing about intuition is, like I say, it came about intuitively. It wasn't even my idea. Somebody else had the idea for me, and then it just kind of made so much sense. And I followed this little thread of synchronicity, and have started, I'm near to finishing this book, but one of the most beautiful things about it is collecting other people's stories to put in the book, to kind of expand the reader's understanding of what intuition is. And obviously expanding my understanding whilst reading these stories, and just how incredible it is that we're all having these experiences that are beyond the possible in many respects. Incredible things happening, and us just listening to a little intuition, or a little warning, or a little something.
Yes.
Amazing things happening as a result, or not even amazing things, just really simplistic things, like really everyday stuff, where the intuition just pipes up and says a little something. And the other day, I was in here about to go on holiday for a couple of days, and the voice in my head said, the cat's in the summer house. Now, had I not been working with intuition, I might have ignored it. I might have thought, no, of course he's not. Or, you know, all the different ways that you can, I've got to go, I'm in a rush, I haven't got time to go check, I'll get my husband to check when he gets home from work because he's going to be here, that kind of thing. But anyway, cat's in some house, I have to follow that. I went out, and of course the poor little cat came flying out. Probably got locked in there the night before. But you're like completely forgettable, completely unmeaningful in the big scheme of things. It helped the cat, who would have got let out at some point later. But it's just these little forgettable, tiny things, but that seems like, where did that come from? That's the not knowing, but also it was so effective and it was useful and it helped the cat. And I think these things happen to us all the time. And again, they're the breadcrumbs, the tiny breadcrumbs that if we take hold of them, can become a meal, a substantial thing. Because what does it really mean? Like, are we connected? Are we all connected? Are we connected via some, you know, kind of symbiosis of mind? Or is there a spiritual thing there? Or is it a biological thing? It's all fascinating to me. I think it's all of those things as well. And I think the spiritual is just another thing that's completely normal and natural that should stay undefined, though.
Yeah, it's not that we are right with everything spiritual, not that so that we are inventing or discovering something new. It's just uncovering who we always have been. And I love that metaphor we just said with the breadcrumbs and the meals. I see as if, yeah, we've kind of, it's about trusting our intuition again, at least for me, and how I now see that image, wow, yeah, with every time I do, where I really get in touch with that, I follow another breadcrumb and I almost kind of, I find another part of myself, which I kind of left behind. And it's kind of also now I think, wow, it's a way of activism, right? One definition for me of activism is to no longer fragment myself, listen, hear my needs and respond to them very simply and pragmatic. And it's an act of activism to lean into our own intuition again. And I'm going to read that you made that post, and I thought, yes, that's what I'm going to. And you said, I have to say, I do think the next evolution of the world sits in midlife women listening more closely to their intuition. Then you asked the question, what is stopping you from hearing that inner voice? What's the block? Let's unpick. And I think you collected from people could comment, right? And I thought, yeah, I want to ask you that question here on the podcast because that's so relevant for so many listeners. Yes, what is stopping us from hearing that voice, or is it that we hear it and we don't trust? What?
I think we're just frightened of flying in the face of everything we've ever been told.
Thank you.
We're frightened of that, you know. I was frightened of it, you know. Like I've kept myself small over the years for many, 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 many reasons. Like far too many to even. But we've all got our own reasons that everybody could empathise with. They're all very similar, particularly as women. But you know, fuck that. Honestly, we are incredible, insightful, creative, inventive people, and I think that we really, I've worked with so many hundreds of women who are just at a precipice of something different in their life, you know, something where they're like, do you know what, Alice, I've been thinking of doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30, I've been wanting to do it since I was a little girl and I'm just not doing it. And I'm thinking I can't do it because I need to pay the bills, or I can't leave this job, or there's all kinds of little fiddly reasons why they can't. And it is just that thing. They are afraid to fly in the face of everything that they've been told about staying small and staying comfortable and forgetting that this is a one short, beautiful life, perhaps of many, perhaps of thousands of life, but this life is meaningful, it's substantial, and we should be, I feel like midlife women are in a place now where, yes, we're not got an equal playing field, but we have power in a way we didn't, and we have a voice in a way we didn't, and we have potential in a way we didn't. Many of us, not everybody, but many of us. And you're talking about these rebellions. I feel like one of my rebellions is just to do what I do and hopefully inspire somebody else to do the same thing. Or their thing, you know? Like, if she can do it, so can I. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yes.
You know? That's where
Yes.
that's where I don't know, somewhere in that big mess, that's where the world changes. And then our children see it and they're like, oh, mum did what she wanted to do. Because my mum did what she wanted to do. And I was always, you know, very impressed with her. She went back to university in her 40s with 3 teenage children and got a first. You know, and I guess that was something that kind of inspired me a little bit. And my dad has always kind of done what he wanted to do in terms of his faith. And I just, you know, at the same time, I was never free and easy. I've always had my own limitations. But I'm just working on blasting through them and getting as weird and uncomfortable with myself as I possibly can, because I'm sure that there's an answer there somewhere.
I'm just taking a little break, a little pause from this wonderful conversation with Alice to invite you to a couple of things. For the ones of you, or if you follow me on Instagram, if you are on my newsletter, then you know that I have embarked on a new Substack experience, that I have created my own publication on Substack, which is this amazing, fastly growing online space, a way of writing, blogging, sharing with one's community. Substack is sweet, slow and intimate. I'm loving it and I would love to have you join me. You can find the link in the show notes. And then I also want to invite you, if not on Substack, head over to my webpage and sign up for my newsletter, because you'll receive very little post once a month, but there is an amazing, wonderful, exciting thing bubbling in the background, a completely generous, free, joyful offer which I will be launching, holding in June. And again, I'd love you to be there. And I think, or I can imagine, that you would love to be there too. So if you head to my webpage, sign up for my newsletter, you will receive an invitation. And last but not least, I want to share with you that since very recently I am practicing wildly poetic osteopathy in London at a wonderful place called Moon, Three Moon Women's Ages, a really multi-interdisciplinary women's health temple sanctuary, and I'm their new in-house osteopath, working with women of all ages and stages, and also with my background and training in pediatric osteopathy, working with mothers and babies and children. And I would love to support you on your journey to health in person with osteopathy. And if you would like to book a session with me, you can do that with the link in the show notes. Okie dokes, let's head back to the conversation with Alice. Yeah, I hear a sense of kind of, I want to say, radicalness. You know, there you would find, I mean, if I see your work, I think, wow, how is she doing that? She has 3 kids, a house, a husband, she's written all those books. But you just but there's a certain amount of not commitment, but just a radical yes for what is,
it's like passion,
what is bubbling, passion, or what is it? Tell us what.
I don't know, passion. It's like you know, I have times where I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do this, I'm tired. But you know what? It always comes back. And when it comes back, I ride it till the wheels fall off. So at the minute, like I'm writing this book, I'd kind of put myself in a place where I'd kept getting ill over the winter. I knew I had this book to do. I kept putting it off. And then as soon as I started to feel better, I'm literally just like, okay, that energy's back again, that intuition. And I think intuition sits really close with imagination and creativity, and the kind of buzz that you get when you're engaging with both of those things, which I think are both spiritual. So I think imagination is deeply spiritual. People go, oh, it's just your imagination. No, it's not. It's your spirituality. It's your inner divine voice. Okay.
Yes.
That's what imagination is. And children know that. But creativity is the expression of your imagination. So is also the divine working right through us. So if I'm not in concert with that, then yeah, I start feeling sick and tired and fed up. And I don't know how I do it. Like I've done all these things. Some of them I've done alongside my children. I've done them with children inside my stomach, my womb, I should say. I have done it. I did a deck of tarot cards with a child. My eldest, we sat and painted them together. This particular book, this intuition book, I'm doing it when the baby sleeps. So in he'll at the minute he's having like an hour's sleep a day. And in that time, I do as much as I possibly can, as well as clean the house. And I just do it. And then there's other times of the day, maybe, I'll be breastfeeding him and we'll be sat chilling out and I'll be writing notes on my phone, to just get a little bit more done. Or maybe a little bit when he's gone to sleep. But I also don't do it all the time because I have to also, be present and be loving and hang out with the kids and hang out with my husband. And I've got quite a few pets as well. I have quite a few responsibilities. But I just, I don't know, you just have to try and find what your zone is and then get in it as often as possible.
Yeah. What did you say? You said before when you said passion, I ride it until the wheels come off. What did you mean with that? I think there lies a medicine in that. You ride when you feel, wow, I can't do it anymore, you ride that, or you ride the passion?
I ride it till I'm done. So, there'll be times where I could sit down and be like, I don't force myself to write. I don't force myself to do things when I don't feel like it, because that's just depressing. That's not joy or passion or anything like that. So if I'm writing a book, I know it will get written. I trust it will get written. But if I'm not in the mood, I'm not going to make myself sit and write it, because it's like my brain stultifies, just nothing comes forward. So when the mood is there, which always happily coincides with perhaps the baby sleeping or a moment, or where he's gone out to the park with his dad and I just have that moment, then I'll just do what I can. And it's amazing what you can do with these small moments. And so when people are telling me that they can't or they don't know how, I guess it's hard, you have to just find your in, and it's going to be completely unique to everybody. And trust it and follow it. And not everybody, wants to write a book. Some people might just want to get themselves to aerobics class or go for a swim or take a walk. And it's just allowing yourself to do it and trusting that you'll find some nugget of gold along the way.
Yeah, in a way, what I really hear now is not to question or judge that impulse, right? Yes. Because maybe sometimes I very often, I guess my impulses to my logical mind are rather weird and and I could kind of turn around before I even just throw myself into it, but trust. And that brings us back to intuition. Is it connect with intuition again? I don't know, but get in touch or learn to listen to our intuition again. Then that's the fertile ground to write those impulses.
Yeah, and I think
before the inner critique comes.
It's learning to trust the intuition, and I think we don't trust our intuition, or we feel like where is our intuition? It's not even present. I think it is present with every single human being on the planet, but just we live in a culture that doesn't cultivate it, and it kind of squashes it and actually tells you, no, don't use your intuition. Do what this guy says, or what this book says, or what the head teacher says, or what the priest says, or what your parents say. So we're taking on board all of these other viewpoints and opinions of how we should be, and we never really have had chance to explore the intuitive until perhaps we get a little bit older, and then it starts to intrigue us. And I think for anybody who's listening, or anybody who has not really felt that connected to their intuition, one of the things I advise is think about the times when you haven't listened to your intuition and then have lived to regret it, because there's a lot of evidence there for you that your intuition was correct. But also just start to follow those little daily ones, like my cat is stuck in the summer house kind of intuition. Things that don't seem to matter here and there, but it's a good way to begin to feel safe with the intuition, to recognize it's not trying to harm you. We're all catastrophizing all the time, and we have anxiety, and we have worry, and we have fear, and those things are really kind of loud in our ear. But I think when we begin to trust the small little intuitions, the way it doesn't matter either way, and then we see that those intuitions are right, then we trust it a little bit more and a little bit more, like a relationship, Yes. And intuition will always see you well. I really, it's not there to harm us.
Yeah, and I like that, as a relationship, because it is, I feel, really building, or that's what I feel right now, building, nurturing that inner relationship to that inner voice, right? It's not just, I mean, she's speaking through me, she is me, but it's, yeah, and I mean, how do you build or nurture a relationship? You listen to the other person. You
Yes.
actually listen.
And women are so
You
well
don't
trained to
date.
be,
Yeah.
we're performative. We're trained to be performative. Like it's all about how we look, how we speak, how we are observed, how we are taken by other people. Actually, how are we taken by ourselves? How do we observe our own inner experience? Well, I think for a lot of the time we don't. And that's how a lot of women and girls end up in situations that, you know, they're not happy. I remember in my 20s, I was performative. I was trying to be a model. I was being the guitarist of the band's girlfriend. It was all about being observed and being a version of myself. And that did not, it was not good for me mentally or spiritually. And so all of that has had to be undone. And I think a lot of women, if we look at it, we're raised to be like this, and to be functional for other people.
Yes.
So it's still like a lot of undoing. So the idea of following our intuition also comes alongside that undoing and that unraveling, which is why I think you do maybe need to get to midlife to be had enough experience to start to unravel them. And not regret the fact that intuition didn't come sooner, but to recognize that everything that came up till this point was exactly what you needed to be able to meet intuition in a good, powerful, equal place.
Yeah.
And to know what you
Well,
want to do with it as well.
Yes. I get actually goosebumps when you say, how much do you trust your own experience? I think that's actually the bottom line, big, bold, that's the invitation. How much do you, and I immediately, when you said that, I think back to a little bit earlier when you talked about the portals, right? And I wonder, wow, if reconnect to my intuition is basically about that question, how much do I trust my very immediate experience? How much do I trust what is alive in me, my innerness? It is, I'm now thinking, wow, then it is that whole journey of undoing, unraveling, also a lot about maybe reclaiming certain portals which we didn't in the first place, because all those portals of the female body, or those rites of passages, that's where we are so called to trust our experience. I've never given birth, but I went through menarche.
Yeah, I think we have so many experiences to, of just like you say, of just being female, and the experiences we have there of portals and power and energy flowing through us. That definitely requires exploration, and that from an intuitive perspective we can begin to flow more powerfully. I have a teenage daughter, almost a teenage daughter, and I just can't wait to see how her grow through all of this. And and I look at her and I'm not even sure if she's quite ready for intuition yet. She has to make so many mistakes first. But also it's good to kind of sow the seeds and to experience that through a very young person. But yeah, I think there's so, and like you talk about rituals and the profound nature of things like, I don't know, giving birth or the menopause, or every single time we bleed is there's just stuff going on all kinds of unseen levels, that I think allows us to understand ourselves better. I think we're absolutely fascinating creatures, actually.
Yeah, and I just thought it really interesting what you say with your teenage daughter. I'm going to sit with that. That just really made me think, wow, yeah, what, as a society or as parents, as whoever the person is who is with that young people, of course we have to, just try ourselves and do mistakes, but what is the key, what is the piece we do, and we do need to kind of give them, even if it's not about talking about intuition, and immediately think, wow, just that, isn't that the whole piece about body shame, mental shame, just knowing that my body, I don't know, I need to see that one, that body, the rightness or enoughness of one's own body, because that's of course in the end where interoception, where intuition, where our feelings and emotions are.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work to try to place into one human. And I, as much as my parents were different and spiritually experimental, I didn't really have that kind of guidance. And I have another daughter as well who's 9, and she's still, I think children are very close to their intuition, and then you grow out of it, and then you kind of grow back into it. She at 9 is very intuitive, but I imagine that will kind of drop away a little bit when she moves into the energy of hormones and friendships and boys and school and or girls, whatever it is. But and then trying to explain and explore magic with a younger person is such a different experience. My daughter had a bit of a heartbreak recently, and she came to me and she was like, "Mom, you're Alice Grist. You write spiritual books. You manifest something for me." And I was like, I don't really think that's how it works. I'm like, I'm not really sure how I feel about manifestation. And I'm not really sure how I feel about manifestation for you, because you're a kid and I'm older, and I'm going to tell you that sometimes things leave our lives because they're supposed to. And I'm not comfortable manifesting that back for you. So we kind of worked on like what would be a comfortable manifestation for me to help her with, which was more about like, manifest this or something better, or at the same time recognizing that things that don't return, that there's a good reason, and trying to steer her towards that understanding of good things taking time, and spiritual divine timing, and bigger portals of power for us. And that's like probably just like she's just like, "Now Mom, just manifest for me."
Yeah,
I think that's why we need to go midlife before we're kind of
because it's about trusting a certain undercurrent, or that the deeper stream within us, which I definitely wasn't connected to when I was 9 or 12 or 13 or anything like that.
You just want what you want, and then don't understand. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard growing up, and I feel like if we're lucky, we get to grow up all our lives.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more question. You as a question. I think you have something to tell us there. Because when I read that post, and I said, so what is stopping you from hearing that inner voice? The first thing you said was frightened. And I just know, I know that will resonate with a lot of listeners. How, and I know that place so well, goodness me, I have an impulse. And then, these literally kind of paralyzing fears, or fears which can make you feel nauseous or wanting to run away to the other end of the world. How do you meet this part of you? It's a part of us as well. What do you do, or what would be as advice? What do we do? There is an impulse, and then that wall of frightenness literally nearly holds us back.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little thing that I've written in my book, which is a little tiny practice that I came up with just the other day, because I was thinking that same question. How do you get over, you have your intuition, and then quite quickly on the back of that intuition, you have the doubts, you have the fear, you have the anxiety, and they talk, the overwhelm, it all talks you out of it. So I figured the only thing we can do is hold a conscious awareness of what I say is the first 3 seconds of any intuition. Because I think after about 2-3 seconds, that's when the fear strikes. That's when we start to overtalk it. But when we really sit with that first 3 seconds, now, whenever I've had an intuition that feels good, bad, in between, it's a very clear instruction. It's a very clear direction. There's no kind of wishy-washy, mishy-mashy anxiety about it. It is a known something. Then all the voices come in. So it could be a really exciting intuition, like, I feel like I need to go to that dance class that you've seen an advert for. and it feels like there's a buzz, there's an adrenaline, there's an excitement, there's an enthusiasm, there's a hopefulness. But then your brain comes in and be like, oh, but I haven't got the right outfit and I need to go buy some shoes. And what if I look ridiculous? And what if everybody else knows everybody and nobody talks to me? And all those different thoughts that come in. And before you know it, gone. You're never going to go to the dance class. Same thing, you have a warning. Like you're with a person and you're like, I don't feel comfortable. But then you go, oh, but everybody knows them and they're wonderful and they're great. And then something perhaps untoward happens with that person. You think, gosh, I wish I'd listened. So I think either way, that first initial, let's say the 3 seconds, is what you need to really bring yourself back to focus on. So you can do it within that time and space, like, okay, I'm having an intuition, or something feels very clear. Or you can look back on it later and go, I had that intuition, it felt really good, but then all these other thoughts came. And it's just kind of a bit of a process of really recognizing what happened in those first 3 seconds. And then realizing and witnessing the voices that came in after. And then that's where it becomes a bit of a body of work, because then you're trying to pull one apart from the other and begin to recognize where those shitty, awful voices come from. And the voices of your childhood, your traumas, your fears, your ex-boyfriends, or ex-girlfriends, your pain, but that's the work. But this first 3 seconds, that's just a crystalline kind of indication of what your soul and spirit really wants for you. So do that one away. Keep that one.
But that's I love that. That's an amazing, you see, we can all start practicing that. And then by the time the book is out, we are really good in kind of dropping into that place again. Exactly. Just because we were talking portal, isn't that moment when that first 3 seconds, I see that now as exactly a little crystal, a seed. It's actually a tiny but huge portal into that.
Bomb.
It's a bomb, right?
Yeah, it can
and if
everything. And we're scared of that too. What if it comes in? What if it is amazing? What if it changes everything? I'm not ready for it. What if it upsets the apple cart of my life? But I think we need to put, again, the what ifs that I always put them in the book as well, as something that when you start going what if, you're blocking yourself, even sometimes in ways that feel positive. You're just renegotiating with the intuition. And I think everybody who I've ever met, or anyone I've spoken to, or whenever I followed my own intuitions, shit goes right. Things go well. Intuition does not leave you in the lurch, and it'll be one intuition will not just take you somewhere and leave you alone and go, bye, I'm going. Intuition will keep showing up. So, for example, I left a job after 18 years that I hated and become miserable in. I needed to write. I needed to do my spiritual work. My intuition spoke strongly on this for years and years and years, and I ignored it. I eventually couldn't ignore it anymore, and I left. Now, that's the point where people start thinking, am I going to be left on my own? What do I do now? How do I cope? Guess what? Your intuition keeps coming. It keeps coming, and it takes you baby step by baby step by baby step. So that's the thing. You follow one intuition, there'll be more.
Yes.
And it will be a very different way of living. Like my life is a very different way of living. But it's not just intuition as well. It helps you marry up with synchronicity and coincidence and things just flowing in a way that's kind of way beyond my conscious choice, but that always serves, So it's trusting all of that as well. There's a lot of trust, actually.
Yeah, but of course we tap into the laws of the universe, something which is that higher orchestration, something which again hopefully will never really grasp and can't.
I think it's just really important that we say to anybody listening, anybody doubting, this is real. It is real. These are real portals. These are real. You follow your heart's desire and stuff comes up to support that. Even there's still frustrations, there's still difficulties, life still goes on, but you can and you should follow your desires, because that's what you were put here to do. And even if it's complicated or messy, there's still the point. Nobody's saying that intuition will lead you to the completely perfect life, but it will lead you to exactly what is necessary and will help you feel more fulfilled.
Yes. Thank you so much for just reminding about the desire piece. And what I really take from that wonderful teaching, I can't wait for the book, is thank you so much for reminding all of us that, because I guess a lot of us, we are so disconnected to intuition. Even tapping into these first 3 seconds of what is so intuitive can feel frightening and scary, just that very inherent thing, I'm now thinking, wow, if you go to a new dance class or you have a new swimming pool, which is much colder initially, you just really need to spend time in those waters and to
be in your
to
experience.
bathe in that, in these 3 seconds, let those 3 seconds become slow motion and just bathe in the experience of tapping into intuition.
Yes.
That's what I really take from that.
And let it keep rolling.
Also not rushing over that,
and just trust it will keep coming. It's not going anywhere.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alice, for sharing your wisdom and intuition.
I've been writing it. It's really nice to vocalize it as well, actually.
Yeah, it's so important, right? To talk, I know it's for myself, to actually share or in the conversation with someone about what I write or do. It's, we can lean into it more deeper.
It's a different perspective and energy. It just makes it more real. The more we live it.
Well, if you get stuck in the writing process, then I'll happily have another conversation to unlock it. Or the latest when it's out. When will it be published? 2027?
Oh gosh, I'm afraid that's not till 2027. Yeah, so it's maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's not for me to say. It would be sooner. That's for the publisher. But I have said I'll get it in a couple of months sooner than they were expecting. So it may be that it makes it edges in earlier, but probably not. Probably 2027. So a little way to wait. But I have lots of other books on the market.
Exactly. The newest one is Soulful Pregnancy, right?
Soulful Pregnancy, yeah. So that was me writing about my pregnancy at the time, sort of week by week. Through all of this stuff, through intuition and creativity and imagination.
You are very inspiring, Alice. I feel recharged. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Job done.
And I let you crack on with animals and children and
bedtime. That's what's next.
And bedtime.
Yeah, bath time, bedtime.
But thank you so much for being with me and all of us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Wow. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for being with me and us and for sharing your incredible wisdom and courage and big and bold. I don't know what the right words are, but I want to say you are amazing, and I'm so happy that Alice, that she has been with us and that I could record this episode. I hope you enjoyed it too, and if you did, then it would be incredibly amazing if you could leave a review, share a comment from whatever platform you are listening to. You can't imagine how much that helps me to spread the Soft Rebellion if you leave a review. And also share this episode with all your family and friends and whoever you think might just need Alice's voice and wisdom to keep going in these rather intense times. And as always, I would love to hear your takeaways. You can always send me an email at softrebellion@florinatali.com. You will receive an answer, or you can tag me on Instagram at florinatali. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Good night, happy morning, and I'm sending you so much love, and I'll be with you soon.